This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you very much for tuning in to the program. It's Thursday, March the 28th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly, Fans King. He's produced the program. If you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial to get in the queue and on the air, 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, it's toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. Just a programming note. So we will not be here tomorrow, so today is the last day to get in on the action for this week, if you're so inclined. Let's check in on Moose Jaw with Team NL at the Canadian Wheelchair Curling Championship, 6-0, after a 8-7 victory last night over Quebec. So top of the table for our squad. Fantastic. Oh, mentioned yesterday, there's some consternation out there, worrying and wondering about the future for the Newfoundland Growlers. Here's a note from Deacon Sports and Entertainment, the owners of the Growlers. They are in collaboration with the ECHL, actively engaged in discussions to reach a positive resolution ahead of the anticipated Board of Governors meeting on the 2nd of April this year. Our unwavering commitment to the local sports community and fan base stands as our paramount priority. So the Growlers are going to take on the Trois-Rivières Lyon, which are also in question, at the Mary Brown Centre, April 5, 6, 7, and they are working with their stakeholders. They are working with the season ticket holders. So there's the update as we have it. And happy opening day to you if you celebrate. Opening day of Major League Baseball, as you know, as regular listeners to the program, love a bit of baseball, love the Blue Jays, and it's opening day. They're in Tampa Bay, 5:30 start our time, so a chance to check it out through the supper hour. And an interesting baseball note, born on this day, 157 years ago, 1867, Deacon Young. Do you know who, no, pardon me, Denton Young. Do you know who that is? That's Cy Young. And Cy is short for Cyclone, which was his nickname when he was on the mound. So you talk about records that are made to be broken, but forget these. Some of these are done. He holds the records for the most wins at 511, the most in history. That's 94-header Walter Johnson. Probably never going to see another 300-game winner, so 511 out. Record for most career innings pitched, 7,356, done. Most games started, 815, done. Most complete games, 749, done. And, of course, the Cy Young Award goes to the best pitcher in baseball. All right, so there you go. Big announcement on the music scene. So we know it's the year of the arts, we're told, here in the province, as designated by the provincial government. So last week when I was away, Iceberg Alley released their lineup for the 10 nights in the tent. Looks like a pretty solid lineup to me. Of course, there's always going to be people complain. That's just nature of the beast, right? But for the Churchill Park Music Festival, Shania Twain... again, there were some complaints, saying, do we ever bring in anything other than washed-up talent? I don't think she's necessarily washed up. She's selling out her Las Vegas shows where she's in residency every single night. She sold over 100 million albums worldwide. Come on over, just one album alone. Sold 40 million copies. One of the highest record-selling artists of all time. I think number one for females in the country genre. So Shania Twain coming to Churchill Park on August 16th and August 17th. And, of course, joining them, Alan Doyle puts off a great show. Lindsay L. and Talk. That's a pretty great lineup. Good stuff. Shania Twain, how about that? Anyway, you want to talk about it. We can do it. All right, another quick note in the world of the arts. The famed Louvre Museum opened in Paris in 1794, first time opened the doors to the general public. Let's get going. So this is a interesting story, and it may indeed be characterized as a potential waste of money. But at an Energy NL event between Federal Minister Philippe Champagne and Premier Francois Philippe Champagne and Premier Fury, considering or talking about possibility to open an office in Boston, Massachusetts. So they talk about the opportunities for energy stability in the United States. Now, we regularly attend like the New England governors meetings, and there's been other circumstances where we've gone, like Boston for the seafood show or expo, as they call it. So is this something that's required as opposed to the open lines of communication that are already in place? I'll leave it up to you to chime in. So they're talking about the fishery, and we can talk about anything inside the fishery like we generally do here on the program because there's a lot of moving parts being discussed these days and a lot of updated information available. So hydroelectricity, there's the interesting one. They just kind of blow through it like, well, fishery, hydroelectricity. it's about time, or it's coming time, where we find out a little bit more about the world of hydro. Whether about Newfoundland and Labrador hydros looking at forecasted demand and where extra supply would be met, the interaction with, say, for instance, World Energy GH2, and the deadline date for any information from government is the 9th of April. Things like the 2041 ongoing discussions between the province of Quebec, Hydro, and this province. It'd be nice to get an update, even if we had some information based on the committee struck in this province to look at what 2041 actually means. There's some widespread confusion about what that really truly means to us. So whether we talk about redress for years past, or what the next 17 years look like, and maybe money to change hands. And notably, if we're talking about hydro to be sold in the northeastern United States, we don't really have any to sell. We've got a big commitment with our so-called partners across the Gulf when it comes to Emera and Nova Scotia Power. They get somewhere in the neighborhood of 22 to 23% of the power from Muskrat Falls right off the bat. Then they have the first opportunity to buy at market value any surplus power they can get their hands on. So where is that power? What is that power? Is it, you know what, 2,225 megawatts at Gull Island? It's widely being discussed in the province of Quebec. And they need the relationship with this province to continue into the future. 15% of Hydro-Quebec's portfolio comes from Churchill Falls. So there's a lot on the line. So that's what they're kind of bandying about. They also go on to talk about the potential for hydrogen. At this moment in time, it looks like the proponents are talking about markets for export of hydrogen ammonia is Europe. So let's see. They're also talking about mining, big one. Big opportunities, even though critical mineral prices fell through the floor last year, like in the world of lithium, fell 82.3%. I mean, extraordinary stuff. So what do you make of that? The opportunity, the possibility to open up an office and have a presence in Boston, Massachusetts. It's an interesting one. Anyway, if you want to take it on, we can do it. And in the world of energy, so there's always going to be, especially with a potential federal election coming, and as a matter of fact, people are receiving polling phone calls that are asking that very fundamental straw poll question. If you had to vote today, who would you vote for? Liberals, Conservatives, NDP, Green, or whatever they're including in it. So there's something afoot. But in the world of campaigning, we hear all the slogans, and people get mad at me when we repeat the slogans that are being used day in and day out by campaigners. But it's the thought of unleashing Canada's potential with natural gas and liquefied natural gas. There's some 5 natural gas terminals in the country, only one for export. It's about 85% complete, and that's in Kitimat, BC. Greece, there was a meeting between the Prime Minister and the President of Greece, and the question was posed by the media as to whether or not Greece would be interested in Canadian LNG. And I think the Prime Minister of Greece said, yes, we would be interested. But the caveat that was not included in much of the media coverage was they'd be interested at competitive prices. So you look around, and it's really hard to get down to the brass tacks about exactly what the cost would be, the time for approval versus having an export terminal actually built and exporting LNG, pipelines to get to the terminals. So I tried my level best to get down to the brass tacks of it yesterday. During the Harper government, there was, I think, a couple of approvals granted. And during the 9 years of the Trudeau government, there was, I think, 12 or 13 applications and 1 approval. So I don't think anybody's made real stern hopes to build more terminals and to export more LNG. If the market's there, let's do it. What I don't understand is when the Prime Minister himself says, well, there's no business case for it. Is it really the determination of the Prime Minister to deduce whether or not there's a business case versus proponents and their investors and the capital market and the potential to sign MOUs, negotiate price? And, of course, there's going to be a moving target between, say, when Kitimat is open and exporting versus if there's another approval and a terminal for export is built. But is that the legitimate debate that some are entertaining on the so-called campaign trail at this moment in time? But it's a fascinating story. But I don't know how it's up to the Prime Minister whether or not there's a business model for it. Anyway, you want to take it on, we can do it. Let's stick with energy for a second. You know, people will bemoan the fact that the focus always comes back to World Energy GH2 and the access to up to 40% in tax subsidies for capital expenditures. And, you know, the concept that oil is dead. Well, oil in this country last year produced more oil in Canada than ever in our history. Revenues for Canadian oil companies is at record highs, profits at record highs. And then you talk about if your business model doesn't work, we should not be subsidized with government money. There's a nugget of truth and validity in that, I would suggest. but in the oil business. So there's a report out there, and I tried to follow these numbers and see if we could punch a few holes in them, and I had a hard time doing it. Last year, the Canadian government provided fossil fuel and petrochemical companies around $18.6 billion in subsidies, $8 billion in loan guarantees for the Trans Mountain Pipeline, which is now costing in excess of $30 billion, $7.3 billion in financing, which passed through Export Development Canada, $1.8 billion was handed to the companies in the form of tax breaks, $1.3 billion went to carbon capture and storage projects. So over the course of the last 4 years, there's been $65 billion in oil and gas subsidies. So, when we talk about the death of, boy, whoever's trying to kill it is doing a terrible job when you transfer that type of money through tax subsidies and or direct investment and or loan guarantees for that industry. Not to say it's good or bad, just to say that that's what we're reading, and I can't find the errors in this report as much as I tried yesterday, because you always have to ensure that the source is not completely agenda-driven. And, of course, in the world of energy, the 1st of April, when we come back to work on Monday, it looks like we're going to see a 3-cent increase going from 14 cents per litre of gasoline to 17 cents per litre for fuels, and I will include diesel in that particular issue, so you want to talk about it, we can do it. I was going to get into what Premier Scott Moe had to say about the large emitters. They should simply emit less as opposed to we charge them more so that they are forced to emit less. I wish I had to think of that. All right, stick with the Prime Minister, and we'll talk about all provincial issues as well. So, in general terms, like provincially speaking, there would be all sorts of pre-budget announcements, and then consequently on Budget Day, no real surprises. It's usually been historically different on the federal side. No real wave or bevy of these pre-budget announcements. But it looks like there's a completely different strategy in place, and they're talking about exactly that on the federal front. See if I can find that particular news piece. So this one is about housing, and particularly renting. So the Prime Minister has talked about a couple of things. Banking is federally regulated. And so he's saying that if you are paying your rent on time, similar to how you pay your mortgage on time, it will go towards your credit score. All right. It does feel a bit gimmicky, but he's also talking about a federally led Renters' Bill of Rights. Housing is a provincial jurisdiction. So between the two of, speaking directly to young Canadians in a hope to curry favor with them and get their vote because of the help that's going to be afforded to them renting and credit score appreciation. But is that even going to pass the smell test of the federal government telling what the provinces have to do regarding like a standardized lease agreement and how all the rental issues are dealt with, rental protections, landlord protections, whether it be rent control, those types of things. So I'm not really sure that makes a whole lot of sense, but we're still only talking about the fact that we have the glossy announcement as opposed to all of the details where the devil resides. So if you want to take that on, we can do it. A couple of quick ones before we get to, because there's a lot on the go. I'm still amazed about the travel nurse situation, and you're probably sick of hearing about it, but it's not going away. So I don't know who knew what when, but Yvette Coffey, the president of the Registered Nurses Union, says that when she was involved with the discussion about bringing in travel nurses, and you've heard Minister Osborne say, if we hadn't brought in the travel nurses, emergency rooms would have been closed and those types of affairs. So they were brought in. The issue that Ms. Coffey is speaking to now is she was not made aware about some of the protections that were baked in so far as the travel nurse agency companies coming to town and being unable to poach our nurses from the public system and or students in the nursing schools. That makes sense to me, right? Because that was the potential was absolutely there and omnipresent. What the union did not know is that if someone left the public sector and went into the private sector, upon quitting, say, the company that we're doing business with, the travel nurses, you had to wait a year before you came back into the fold. Apparently that was unknown for the most part. Would that not have been part of the exit interview information shared with nurses? Shouldn't the union have known that so they could communicate it to their members? Because what do we have now? We've got travel nurses, of which the numbers are also included in the news story today. There's 357 private agency nurses working in the province, down from 373 in February. Okay, fine. But what happens to these nurses? It's fine to try to put some protections in place so that our public system was not eroded by poaching. But if I quit as a travel nurse and I can't get back into the public fold here for 12 months, I'm probably not going to stay. Or I might just stay on as a travel nurse. or I might simply leave for a job elsewhere. So while it felt like a good idea at the onset, now it further complicates and adds to the chaos and confusion between the nurses, and not just RNs, but of course, some people get their feathers ruffled a little bit when we don't include all of the healthcare disciplines. But of course, we do, and we can, and we should, and we will, because between LPNs and nurse practitioners and social workers and doctors and clinicians and up and down the line, we've got shortages across the board for the most part. And in the world of some of the reviews, we're awaiting some more information on it, how we're going to deal with things like long-term care, personal care, and the concept of aging in place. One thing that I really hope is not only about staffing levels and the ratio of staff to patients and protections and safety on wards, for instance, like the dementia wards, but the two that just every time I think of long-term care, these numbers pop back into my mind, and we are having a wicked hard time getting up-to-date information here. But when we talk about what feels like punishment for residents, and it's heartbreaking for them and their family, is when you find your nan, your papa, or your mom, or your dad in restraints. In this province, 14.2%, this most recent numbers I have, 14.2% of residents are in restraints in long-term care. The Canadian national average, 6.5%. Is that a staffing issue? Is it a control issue? We don't know, but I hope that's part of the review. Also, when we talk about the use of antipsychotic drugs in long-term care, in this province, the average is 38.3% of residents. Canadian national average, 21.9%. There's something amiss inside of those numbers. So a lot to it. And of course, we'll finish off with education, which I should put at the top every day because I think that's where it belongs in order of importance. You've heard the stories about violence, and we can take it on, and you can talk about math, science, and reading scores, but there was a caller yesterday who one of her prime concerns was cell phones and social media. And fair enough. There's an interesting story coming from the province of Ontario, where 4 Ontario school boards have launched in 4 separate cases $4.5 billion lawsuit against Snapchat, TikTok, and Meta, which owns Facebook and Instagram, of course. They say that those platforms are deliberately hurting students, interfering with their learning, harming their mental health, leaving educators to, quote-unquote, manage the fallout. So this is really quite something. $4.5 billion. And I don't know how frequently we all speak with our children just about things as fundamental and as in your face as social media. We know the digital pylon can be really problematic and tragic for children, but they're talking about real compulsive use and how they say these platforms have rewired the way the children think, rewired the way they behave and learn. So they're talking about maybe improvements made on those social media platforms, but they're suing them to the tune of $4.5 billion. And that Ontario is not alone. Similar lawsuits in different parts of the world have been considered and filed. So if you want to take that on, let's go. How are we doing on the telephone? Vance, we're on Twitter. Speaking of social media, we're VOCM Open Line. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. When we come back, let's have a great show. That means you're in the queue to talk about whatever's on your mind. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Let's begin on the top of the board on line number 1. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Morning.
I'm on the air?
You are.
Yes, I called yesterday wondering if the plant owners in Newfoundland would be automatically offered the same opportunity as what they were offering the plants off the island when it came to the different species of fish and crab that could be shipped out.
Yes, ma'am.
And I waited all morning, actually, to see if anyone will call in or anything on it. But anyway, we got a call from the Director of Licensing, Derek Lockyer. And I hope everyone is sitting down for the answer that he gave us. It is unbelievable. Anyway, he said, we cannot process anything in our plant other than what we are currently processing. That's it. There's not going to be any processing licenses given out in the province other than what is now is what's going to be. Okay, so he did say that we could apply $1,000, apply for a buyer's license, and we can buy whatever we want and ship it off the island. Now, I don't know if that makes sense to you or not, but it definitely did not make any sense to us.
What would the business case even be for that? So you'd buy it at what would be the going rate and then ship it out to have it processed outside of our own plants to then
we can buy whatever. We just apply for a buyer's license, okay? And we can ship everything off the island, not processed.
Okay.
Okay, but we cannot process it in our plant. So right now, our plant will be probably closed down because the product that we produce, there will not be enough to keep a plant open if some of our harvesters decide to ship it off. So we will be totally out of work. We could have stayed open if they had offered us different species that we were applying for. We could have just kept going even if we lost some of what we already have. So we will definitely be affected totally by this decision. Now, we it doesn't make sense. The decision that was made did not make any sense whatsoever. And so we said, well, who made this decision? Because we sent letters, actually, to Derek Lockyer, to Albus Law, Premier Fury. And anyway, Derek Lockyer said that the decision was made by Premier Fury to do this.
Yeah. So
now, it's. I know what we thought about it after, and we said, well, why would they do that? What would be the reasoning behind that? So we figure that they feel that the fishers are going to fail on their quest to ship off the island. So the cartel of plants that have, the big plants that have the licensing right now for the snow crab or whatever, they do not want any more processors in the province, because they know the fishers are going to fail in what they're doing. So they figure when this happens, that everything will go back to the status quo. And it'll be easier to take back a buyer's license than it would be to take back a processing license.
Yeah, but let's take that a step further, though. Let's see if that makes any sense. So they don't want any more processors processing the product that's protected by some of the big players. But if you bought the product yourself, that's not going to go to their plant. So we really didn't achieve anything by you not being allowed to process, because if you say, let's just pick a round number, you buy 1,000 tons and take it out of the provincial processing system and you ship it and sell it to a processor in Nova Scotia, it's still 1,000 tons that they didn't get. So how does that protect them, period? So it just kind of, it doesn't feel like it's thought all the way through.
No, well, what it is that crab do not have the shelf life that other species have.
Of course not.
It's harder to ship crab off the island. I mean, you're out in the boat 3 or 4 days, right? The crab is in the hull of your boat, and then you get it in. Then you got to put it on a truck, and got to get it off the island, right? And they just know that the fishers are going to fail in this. They do not want any more processors. They could issue probably all the buyer's license that they want just to shut you up. That's all it is.
Yeah, but I suppose they could give out annually renewable licenses for processing too, as opposed to permanent ones. But I think for the transport of product, especially
really,
like crab,
because it's a lot of expense to set up a plant for processing crab.
Of course,
or anything else, right?
Yep.
So you're not going to invest in all of this if you know that next year I might lose my license again.
Plus, I think the transporting out of sensitive material like crab is probably going to have to be flown out, which, of course,
they just.
My goodness.
This is what it's all about. They just know that the fishers are going to fail, and right now, plant workers are not calling in and not complaining. They don't realize. I don't think they realize. Also, Derek said, I don't know if I should say this or not, but he did say that the plant workers do not realize that they are going to be affected the way that they are going to be, that this is definitely going to affect Newfoundland more than what they think it is.
Well, I mean, if the thought is that the harvesters aren't going to really see what they hope brings to bear by outside buyers, then if that does not happen, then the plant workers will not be affected. If a significant percentage of different species leaves, then they will. And I don't know if people are not calling or not talking about it as openly as you think they should, because I don't think anybody really knows if this is going to work or not, or how it's going to work. We don't even have the details released from the government and or the union, a legal document to see, okay, here's exactly what we're talking about, as opposed to just the general concept of out-of-province buyers. because there's all kinds of things that are part of the collective bargaining. EI, workers' comp, things that are not really, baked in to talk about how much per pound someone's willing to pay for crab or lobster or cod or turbot or halibut or capelin or whatever. So that's why I think people are still kind of mum at it, because I don't think anybody really truly knows how this is going to play out. Would you like to say anything else quick before I take another call?
Yes, I would actually, because our plant right now, we know how it's going to play it with us. And we have 35 employees that are definitely going to be out of work because of this. Okay, I don't know about all the other plants. I can't speak for anything else. We know what's going to happen to us. And if we were given the opportunity, we could have kept those people employed. And I know that my job will probably be gone. But I tell you, I'm going after Premier Fury's job after this, because there's not enough power and enough money out there that could have made me make this decision that he have made.
Why are you so sure that you're all going to be compromised the way you articulate?
Because we know the species that we are processing right now, we know that they can easily be shipped to the U.S., and we cannot compete with the U.S. In Canada, yes, we could compete with all the minimal processing requirements and whatever.
But that's only based on whether or not...
kind of a unique business.
Okay.
And, we will definitely be affected.
I hope that's not the case. I appreciate the time and the update this morning.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for listening.
No problem. Bye-bye. Let's get another one before we get to the break. Let's go to line number 3. Paulette, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you this morning?
I'm doing well, thanks. How about you?
I'm doing fine. Thank you very much.
Great.
I'm just wanted to call in just with a good news story this morning.
Terrific.
Amidst the turmoil that's going on, the provincial budget, the fish protest, homelessness, and here in Botwood, which is the area I'm calling from, our communities are divided over the proposed wind turbine project. But most recently, there's talk from the president of the NLTA talking about violence in the schools. I myself am a retired teacher. I taught for 30 years. And let me tell you, children haven't changed. The world has changed big time. And in the midst of all this, we have a lady by the name of Leanne who moved here in this area from Sudbury, Ontario. And she used her talents to open up a knitting class, which is a really old skill that's being lost, for children ages 9 to 12. This knitting class started about 6 weeks ago, and it gave kids a new interest, and it really caught on. It's really taken off. You see all these little kids running around with knitted headbands, carrying pin cushions, and we even got a call from the school complimenting Leanne about her giving her time to these children free of charge. And just want to tell you that the lady who called from the school basically said, at a time when kids were taking out their phones and their tablets, now they're pulling out knitting needles. And I just wanted to call and give a little a shout out to Leanne for her time that she's given in this area.
Bravo, Leanne. I mean, things like that, tactile things like knitting. I don't know if it's as popular as it once was. Now, I know people are still knitting for Nonia, and there's plenty of knitting circles and knitting clubs, but I'm going to guess that amongst young people, it's sort of a lost art, I would imagine. So I think it's great.
Yeah.
And it could become something, that's a lifelong potential hobby that they'll pick up. I know I watch my wife crochet an awful lot around my house, but I think that's a brilliant story. What's Leanne's last name?
Pardon me?
What's Leanne's surname?
Her surname is Dupuy.
Dupuy. Leanne Dupuy. Fantastic. I really love that story.
It is a wonderful story. And then when the knitting class is done, which will be shortly, she's going to start some crochet. So that will give them another alternative. And like I say, when you see all these kids, you can tell who's in the knitting class because they're all wearing these knitted headbands. And they're quite proud of what they've done, and they catch on so fast because she actually opened a class for adults, and I'm in that class, and I'm like quite slow. Adults don't catch on half as fast as children do, and I just thought it's worth a little compliment to Leanne today, giving of her time. And amidst everything that's on the go, I think she deserves a little pat on the back. And she's just new to the community, and she's already made her mark here.
I think that's a wonderful story, and I'd love to speak with Leanne about it and, you know, how the children react and what have you, to add to what you had to tell us this morning, Paulette. Really appreciate this good news story. It's wonderful.
Okay, then. Thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you. All right, bye-bye. Here we go. That's pretty cool. And, you know, working with your hands, working on your fine motor dexterity, it's something that is sort of lost as well, because we're just, you know, dealing with our iPads and keyboards and telephones and what have you. And I brought this up a while ago, and I think it's worthwhile putting it back in there, is, you know, when you and I went to school, if you're in and around my age, one of the classes early on in life is you learn how to print, then you learn how to write. Cursive writing, which is gone. I mean, many young people now can't tell time from an analog clock and maybe can't read cursive writing because everything's in text, right? But the research is pretty clear on this. So they talk about learning cursive improves your retention and comprehension. You know, you just think about it in your mind's eye here. So when you have the pen in hand and you are flowing to create the letters and join them together, that gives you better opportunity, not only for retention and comprehension, but it talks about how the continuous flow and the enhanced motor dexterity gives you a better idea how words work in combination. Consequently, earlier to read, improves your ability to deduce what you've written and what you're reading. They also talk about it just engages your brain in a much different fashion than tapping a button. Think about it. Writing a P with your pen feels different than writing a G and an F and a W, but when you touch a keyboard key, every key feels the same. The P is just like the O is like the I, the U, the Y, the T, the R, the E, the W, the Q. So it makes a lot of sense. I think we should teach cursive. All right, let's take a break. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Bigland FM radio network.
Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 2. Good morning, Tina. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. Thanks for having me.
No problem.
I'm Tina, Ben's mom, Tina Olivero. I'm the founder of Guardians of Recovery, which is what we formed after Ben passed away from fentanyl overdose last summer. Today I want to talk about, and I'm calling on behalf of 2 people who I get calls every day from people who are dealing with the same thing that I did, which was their kids on death's door trying to get help with mental health and addictions. And I'm trying for the life of me to figure out why people can't get into detox and rehab. So the two most recent calls that I got, one was from a mom. Her son is actually in detox, but she's very fearful of his transition from detox to rehab because there can be up to a 3-month wait. And once you've gone through detox, if you get out of detox and you have a long wait time, then you invariably end up going back to the situation you were in, and it's not helpful. These people need, much longer care. The other is from a dad his son is very, very sick with severe mental illness and can't get into Waterford. So these are very typical types of things that I deal with every single day, calls that I get. I know that from my own experience. I had a brother who since passed with, he had schizophrenia, and I spent many, many times trying to get him into Waterford. So this is not a unique issue. This is something we hear of every day. So I can't figure out what's going on in the province. Well,
not to oversimplify a very complicated issue, but we simply do not have enough detox facilities and beds, nor do we have enough beds in the world of long-term counseling and some rehab and addictive services. So, the province talks about doing more on that front, but the fact of the matter is the wait time between detox and getting a bed in a rehab facility is simply because we don't have enough of either.
Yeah. Well, we dug into that. We got the ATIPA reports. We figured out actually how many beds were in each facility. So, for example, during Christmas at Detox, there was 3 beds available out of 19. So there's lots of beds and lots of space. But when I dug down to it and I asked, the manager of the operations what was going on, she said we didn't have the staff to staff them. And so then when we went back to the government and said, why don't we have the staff for people to get into detox? They said, well, we have staff shortages. So we said, okay, well, what are you going to do to fix that? And then we went back and had back to them realizing that, it's actually not a problem with staff shortages either. It's just that it's not a priority to get the staff, because I think since Ben died, it's been 7 months now, and they formed the all-party committee to get all these things solved. And as far as I know, I think they've met once to be able to talk about the next meeting and how they're going to organize themselves, but they actually haven't done anything. So people are dying. We have right now, Dr. Denick said in his last report that we have almost double the amount of illicit drug deaths in the province. So it's not a priority. It's not that we don't have beds. It's not that we don't have staff. It's that our government has not made this a priority.
I've fallen into a bad habit here, and it just subconsciously has happened to me. When I say bed, I don't just mean the bed, the physical bed and the pillow and the box spring. I mean the staff, so they allow that bed to be used. So I should be more careful on that front, because I say the same thing about hospitals and wait lists. Sometimes it's not that there's not a physical bed upstairs; it's simply not the staff to accommodate another patient on the ward. So my apologies. I somehow fallen into that trap. I don't know if it's a priority or not. I mean, I can't understand why it would not be. We talk about it. The stories are out there. They're heartbreaking. Mm-hmm. It's not going away. It's getting worse. I mean, generally speaking, things kind of move west to east in this country insofar as severity and prevalence. If you see what's happening in British Columbia, then all of a sudden when you track the data from BC, Alberta, Manitoba, all the way further east, the numbers are very much online. When you talk about per capita, how bad things are getting on that front. The police are putting warnings out frequently about the presence of toxic drugs, fentanyl and otherwise on the streets. I don't know how the province would not make a priority of it, because if people are dying, what's a bigger priority than to try to curb people dying?
Right, exactly. So I guess this call is a call to action for government, and Guardians of Recovery we now have 5,100 concerned citizens in that Facebook group who are working and trying to get government to listen. We've sent in hundreds and hundreds of letters, most of them are never responded to. So we started to create a bank of letters that the government doesn't respond to, because someone has to hold them accountable at some level. And then the sad story of the father who has his son trying to get into Waterford. I mean, this is tragic that is someone who is so sick right now with schizophrenia. He's actually sitting in the lockup. The Waterford says that he's capable of standing trial, that he's fit to stand trial. But we know that he's threatened his father. He's a danger to himself, that he has a long history of schizophrenia. So we have doctors at the Waterford that are sending people back out that are in a state of, they may be perfectly fine and be able to say, I'm great, it's Wednesday or whatever. But they're actually very, very sick. And that's part of the illness, is that people can be very articulate in the moment, but they can be extremely sick and not seen. And the biggest issue there, of course, is the privacy law, because the parents and families can't speak to the doctors on their behalf and advocate for their loved ones. So all of our systems lead to the continuation of illness and the continuation of drug use, when all roads should be leading to recovery. We have like a system of enabling that is providing people with, drugs and alcohol and houses and hotels and places to stay in what they call low barrier shelters, where people can continue to use drugs, but nowhere is there an emphasis on those people. Like, what's the exit strategy? Where's the recovery plan? So we're spending more money. We're spending a lot of money, far more than we are on recovery, on what they call, they're basically drug den shelters and, hotels around the province that are all making money from people living in those places, but they continue to use drugs, and recovery is not a priority. So it's on both sides of the fence. It's like people can't get into detox that want to get in. People can't get into, the Waterford. And in the case of Ben, the saddest story in the world is Ben, Ben tried to get into detox, and they sent him next door and put him on Suboxone when he wanted to get into detox, which should never happen. And then when he went back to the shelter, there was a man there who tried to get into the Waterford and couldn't on a Friday night. And the next morning, Saturday morning, Ben woke up and found that poor man hanging from the side of the building on 150 Le Merchant Road. These are the things we're dealing with.
Again, my condolences, and this should not be part of the conversation. We should be talking about advances being made on this front versus what seemingly is the issue and the situation getting worse day by day. Tina, I appreciate you making time for the program. Thanks for the call. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, let's try to stay half on track with the breaks today. Kristen, you're next to talk about what's happening in the province of schools. Charles was there to talk about the crab fishery. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Bigland FM radio network.
Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 4. Kristen, you're on the air.
Hi, good morning, Patty.
Good morning.
I was listening to your program yesterday, and you had a caller on who was the former president of the NLTA, and he was speaking to the violence in schools.
Right, that would be Jim Dinn, the current leader of the NDP, member for St. John Centre.
Oh, okay. Didn't catch the beginning of it, but I really wanted to call because he, as a parent of a neurodivergent child, he hit on some key phrases that kind of got me thinking. And the key phrases that he used were inclusive learning, self-regulation, occupational therapists, and children with learning, emotional, mental health issues. And no doubt he's right, but those phrases kind of led me to believe that some of the violence in schools that you're seeing may be related to the increase in autism, ADHD, and ODD with our kids, especially in the lower grades.
Yeah, now I can understand how a mother of a neurodivergent child would hear them that way. That's not how I took it, but it doesn't matter how I took it, it's how you took it. So do you think the implication was the inclusive model has led to more or a higher prevalence of violence because of the children might be on the spectrum, have a behavioral disorder or what have you?
Not the inclusive model, because I do believe the inclusive model works. These children do deserve the same education as every other child. But I believe that there is probably an increased violence because of the behavioral issues that are associated not just with autism, but ADHD, ODD, and many others.
Right.
And especially in our younger kids. So I feel that the issue of violence in schools is bigger than the school system, because what you're facing is kids are not getting diagnosed in their younger years. The wait lists for diagnosis for all of these issues is extensive. So by the time community health realizes that, okay, there's an issue here, and the referral goes in, you've got 2 years plus before the Janeway will look at you. So now your kid's at school age, and they haven't even been diagnosed yet. You can't get services for these children without a diagnosis. The schools can't get student assistance without diagnosis. So it's bigger than just the schools. It's a government-wide problem. If in fact that is the case, that there is more violence in the schools because of these disabilities.
Just let me put something out there. Like I say, and it's important to speak with people like you when I talk about how I view these issues and how I talk about them. Let's say inclusive education. When I say it's not working, it's not that it's not an appropriate concept to make sure that everyone has the exact same opportunity as for an education. When I say it's not working, is because we don't have the supports in place. So the model conceptually is excellent, but the execution is poor because we don't have enough support, whether it be teaching assistants or student assistants, in the classroom for children who need some additional support and some help. Because if you have a teacher standing in front of a class of 24, 6 students with exceptionalities, which of course would occupy more time for the obvious reasons, then consequently the entirety of the class is probably not getting the type of attention they need, including the 6 students with exceptionalities. So when I say it's not working, it's because we haven't put the structure in place for it to work the way it's intended. What do you think?
I I 100% agree with you. And it goes right down not just to the bodies, though. It goes down to the training. It goes down to not just, yes, okay, a teacher has an education degree and they're in the classroom, but classrooms have changed. So to have an education degree and to be in a classroom teaching students, and like you said, you may have 6 there with exceptionalities. If you don't have the training to deal with autism, ADHD, ODD, and the behaviors that are associated with that, and to be able to, if there is a meltdown and a child throws something across the room, how to de-escalate that situation from a pencil case being thrown to next a chair being thrown, then it's not a helpful environment for the kids with the exceptionalities, the teacher, or the kids who are neurotypical.
I think the issue of training is obviously on point, but I don't think we can adequately train a homeroom teacher to cover all of those bases. That's where the itinerant teachers and the student assistants and the teaching assistants, they're the people that need that type of training, because the amount of work already on the shoulders of the province's teachers, I don't think we can accommodate more of that type of training. That's why we have specialized teachers who are assisting either the teacher and or the student directly. I think maybe there's not the level of training required to do the job adequately in some of those areas, because I don't think a homeroom teacher could actually shoulder. Additional training is not going to change the composition of the classroom, is it? It's not going to change the amount of time that a teacher would have to spend with one of those 6 students with an exceptionality. So I think as the support staff need the type of training you're talking about. Your thoughts?
Absolutely, it is the support staff.
Okay,
and that's where our education system is doing a disservice to these kids and the other children, because again, without a diagnosis, the school cannot fight for the extra student assistant time. So if you've got a kid, an example without naming a school, there's a school in my area right now, the kindergarten class. They have 4 kids on the spectrum. They have 4 kids who are diagnosed with ADHD, and there's 4 children waiting for diagnosis. That's 12 kids out of a class of 25. And you've got 1 student assistant and a teacher in there full time. So that's not enough support in that classroom. So make no wonder the teacher's getting burnt out, that there's issues happening in the classroom, that the kids are scared. Like, the model doesn't make sense of what the education system is currently doing. If you're going to put all of these children in the one class, you need to have the supports there. And the supports being the student assistants or the IRT teachers, they need to be trained in diffusing those situations. Not every child is the same, obviously. ASD, every child is different, every approach is different. But then on top of that, so a kid doesn't get their diagnosis, or if they immediately get their diagnosis in kindergarten or grade 1, the first response is, okay, well, let's treat the inattentiveness. So let's medicate, right? So you medicate. But the chances of the first medication helping that child, usually you have to find the right one. So you're months and months and months of changing medications. But one of the side effects of some of these medications, if they don't work, is another increase in violence, right? The aggression spikes. So it's a compounding issue. And I'm not trying to, say that the kids with ASD or any neurodivergent child shouldn't be in the classroom, but it's just, out of that man's conversation, that's where I went, because I picked up on those 4 key phrases that he said. And no doubt that is probably part of the problem, but it's not going to get better if the education or the training or the class sizes don't change.
Class size and composition is a go-to reference by the NLTA, whether it be through Mr. Dinn or Mr. Langdon or anybody else, and you ask any teacher out there, at some point, when we just have a soft cap on the number of students that could be in a classroom, at some point, it's not only the numbers, but the composition issue is very, very real. Speak to any teacher that has any significant number of students with exceptionalities in his or her classroom, it really becomes unmanageable, unwieldy, and consequently, the teachers burnt out, the students who have exceptionalities are not getting what they need, the students who are not on that range are not getting what they need. So, as much as we have a sense of having done something that's morally right for society, if it doesn't work, it's worthwhile admitting out loud it's not working. And where is it not working? And let's fix it. And if we can't fix it, let's not tear it down to the studs, but let's just make sure that what we do actually works, because what's happening now doesn't. And that's not through the fault of any one person or one government. Just acknowledge where we are. Let's be honest with ourselves and just put it on paper. You know, the education accord and all these things to transform and modernize education, fine. But if it goes right back to the current system of soft caps on class size and the current composition, we're not going to change a whole lot, is my fear. I'll give you the final word, Kristen, before I have to get off to the 10 o'clock news.
I would just, maybe the government, the school boards, or even the school councils themselves, when they're advocating for things for the school, should actually bring in parents who have kids with exceptionalities. Because at the end of the day, the parents of the kids with the exceptionalities, we're the ones who spend the most time with them. We may have other ideas of how things could work in the school that would benefit everybody, rather than just, going status quo.
That's always, I think, a wise thought and a wise place to leave it this morning. I appreciate you making time for the program.
Thank you, Patty.
Take good care.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. Okay, there you go. Lots of that one. Let's take a break for the news right on time as usual. Charles, you're next to talk about the crab fishery. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Charles, you're on the air.
Morning, Patty.
Morning to you.
Patty, I'm calling about the crab fishery, and what prompted me to call is this previous caller, or not the previous caller, but the first caller was on talking about they can't get a processing license, but they can get a buyer's license. I was about to congratulate, after this letter come out, if there's no weasel words in it, what that government is supposed to send to John Ifford and FFAW, but it appears that nothing is going to happen, because government knows full well that there's no crab going to be shipped out of here, or very little, because it hasn't got the shelf life. Not like lobster. Lobster can get shipped out of here, and that will help the fishermen. But the only way that things are going to improve is to lift the caps on these plants, issue more processing license, which the late Ray Jancy recommended, and why won't they do it? And right now, this lady who called in who can't get a license, they're going to be increasing the crab quota this year, and the processors currently can't handle what they've got. So ASP has got some. They got some pressure put on government, or got some pull somewhere with someone, because it does make sense. Issue more license, so it creates more work in Newfoundland and Labrador.
Well, I guess, it remains to be seen exactly what this document is going to look like, doesn't it? Because just talking in general terms sounds good, but is it really getting us where the fish harvesters in particular and or the processors want to go? We don't really know, because the government has said they commit to reviewing the processing landscape and the potential to increase capacity, but that's meaningless.
Exactly.
What does a review mean? And who's going to do it? When are they going to do it? Will it be for this season? Will it be for next season? Will it be for 10 years from now? We don't know. So that's why I'm anxiously waiting to see it in writing, exactly what we're talking about.
Well, that's why I just mentioned about weasel words in the letter.
Fair enough.
But anyway, Petty, over the years I've been watching the price of crab, because I used to go to Florida, but since the pandemic I didn't go back. I haven't been back there. But just an observation now, in 2017, the fishermen were getting $4.39 a pound, and in the supermarkets in St. Pete's, it was anywhere from $11.99 to $12.99. Okay, and 2018, they got the fishermen got $4.55 a pound. 2019, they got $5.38. Now, in some cases, some bonuses paid on that as well. And the price was in the supermarket was around $12, probably up to $13. Okay, now in 2023, the fishermen were paid $2.42 a pound, and you look at the supermarkets. Now I haven't there, but I got friends who were in Florida, and I got relations down the States in different areas. And I'm just going to give you an example of what the prices are down there now. In New Mexico, in the Farmington, Albuquerque area, $14.99 a pound. In Florida, it was $16.99. It's down to $15.99. The last time, that was 2 weeks ago. I checked that. In San Diego, California, $20.99. Back in 2017, like I said, and 2019, they paid $5.38 a pound. Now they can only pay $2.42 a pound. Why? Who's getting a lot more of the pie, or is the pie being distributed among a lot of people? I don't know.
Oh, it goes through a lot of hands before it makes its way to a grocery store shelf in San Diego or in Sarasota. That's for sure.
Well, maybe what needs to be done is we get all this needs to be investigated, and maybe Danny Williams was right when he wanted to set up that buy the marketing arm of fishery products and have it all go into one marketing arm. But the processors wouldn't go along with it because they got. If they do that, then they got to reveal what's going on. But anyway, it doesn't appear that unibary formula that they or the price that they're using there seems like that's lagging behind.
It could possibly be. For people who don't know what that is, it's simply a sliding scale that adjusts where the market adjusts. Whether it be a better price afforded to the harvester, then the market price will be reflected in the price paid at the wharf. So it's just a sliding scale, basically.
Yes, I understand that, but I'm saying that it appears that that's not working because back in 19, the price down in the States was lower and is higher now, and processors can only pay $2.42. I'd like to know what the explanation is for it, and I hope that the Fury government. I was going to congratulate them, but what I heard this morning from that lady, I don't think that is going anywhere. Personally, I think that what they should do is bring in the fifth estate. They're the ones, seems that they can investigate things. And by the way, they're coming on tomorrow night about the Titan accident.
Yeah, there's a big story in the national news today about all the warnings that were put forward and ignored by Stockton Rush, the guy who owned the Titan submersible. Just a quick one. When I said, for folks who don't know sliding scale, I know you know, but sometimes some of those very industry-specific terms like Erner Barry, for some people listening, they might not know if that's fit to eat or what it actually does. So I can't wait to see this document that has been so-called negotiated in concept between Mr. Efford and his fellow protesters, the union and the government. And I don't know, but you talk about the investigation here, and you mentioned FPI, which I think is a point that gets lost in the conversation. The biggest mistake in the breakup of FPI was the government not retaining the marketing arm, which was one of the most significant components of Fisheries Products International. So I think that was a great point you made there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They should have kept that, but look, we haven't advanced in 200 years. In Nova Scotia, my grandfather told me that when they were fishing, if they fished with someone in Nova Scotia, they got a better price and they got better meals on the boat. That's when they were in the open dories now, fishing. And in Nova Scotia, right now, they started out, as I understand, at $2.50 a pound. But at the end of the day, they get a bonus on top of that, and sometimes that's as high as $1 a pound. That's what I've been told. I'm not absolutely sure of that, but that's what I've been told. But I'm going to check into that further if I can. And but in the meantime, this has been going on for this crab issue has been going on for so long, and I thought for sure that Fury government said, okay, enough is enough. We're going to get to the bottom of this and do something about it. But it doesn't appear from what that lady is saying there's going to be much happen.
Yeah, I think her concern, though, wasn't quite specifically on crab. She's thinking that her plant is going to be compromised. And she said minimum processing requirements, to me, which kind of sounds like head off and gut it. So it's not crab. So she fears that the outside buyers, with the ease of which and the longer shelf life of, say, cod or turbot or halibut is much different than crab. So consequently, she thinks she's going to lose a lot of the species she would process. So it wasn't necessarily crab specific.
No, but I mean, I think she's interested in getting to be able to process crab.
Oh, absolutely, she is.
Yeah. So why they got an increased quota now? So why not give her a license? And the other people that Ray Jancy recommended, give them crab. I mean, why should they have that cartel? ASP got a cartel. Jeff Loader can say what he wants. Is a cartel or a monopoly, whatever you want to call it. They've got it. And I heard on. I didn't hear this, but I read on Facebook, and I don't know how factual it is. He said that the processors are paying for CPP. No, they're not.
We cleared that up here.
It's EI. Oh, that's cleared up, is it?
Yeah, that's cleared up. So Jeff Loader said it, and I asked him, which is it, because the harvesters would tell me it's not true. They, to their credit, very quickly got back to me about it and settled it. So it's workers' comp and EI. They do not pay the CPP portion for the harvester. So that's absolutely not accurate, and they did clear that up. So at least we, sometimes different groups are good in follow-up, some are not so good at it, but the CPP issue, I think that's been settled, and hopefully people heard that, because it's simply not true. And you talk about the TAC has been revealed. The increase this year is 5.4%. So it's not a huge increase, but what that also leads to is, why are there caps on certain plants? And the plant that people talk about all the time is St. Mary's. So they applied for £2.5 million. They got it, but they needed and could have processed more. So I don't know if it was an error in only applying for that much, but I think they brought in an additional £4 million when other plants were over capacity. And so that it's not 5.4, it's 5.2%. So it's about 57,500 tons is this year's crab fishery.
Yeah. Well, I say to government, open it up to competition in this province. You don't have to ship the crab outside. Open up the competition in this province. There's people who can process this, and there's workers can do it. So open it up. What's ASP afraid of? They got so much power over the government.
Let me just ask you a question about competition there in the processing side. So let's just say they give out 6 more licenses to process snow crab. What's that going to mean for the price paid at the wharf? From where I sit, probably nothing. Because if the market price is set and the price spreading panel is currently a flawed structure, but let's say that, pick a round number, they land on 250. Even if you have 6 more plants, why would anybody pay more than the 250 if that's the going number?
No. Well, maybe they won't, but at least you create more competition. We don't have any competition today. That's the problem.
Charles, appreciate the time and the input this morning. Enjoyed the chat.
Okay, all the best.
Same to you. Take care. All right, bye-bye. Let's take a break. Come back for the carbon tax. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. What happened to Tony? Is he coming back? He dropped out there. Okay, let's keep rolling here. Let's go to line number 3. Edgar, you're on the air.
Yeah, how's it going there, Patty?
Okay, how about you?
Not bad. Listen, just came from Alberta, buddy, last week.
Right on?
Totally different world up there.
How so? What was your experience?
5% tax. Gas $1.38. I took my son's Pathfinder 8-seater, big old rig down on empty, light on. Took $60 worth of gas. Here's what, $1.80 last week?
Somewhere close to that. I filled up, I think, last week at $1.78, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, they all had a little get-together there one Saturday night. I was there. All Newfoundlanders there lives together on Landry Heights in Grand Prairie. And there's a big boom coming up there now. A lot of work. They're not going to get handy to the people that they need to go to work. And they're on here now talking about all the work is coming up, all the divided highways and the penitentiaries and the hospitals and new pavement, new all this. And where's it all to? When's it all going to start? She's been announcing that the last 3 years.
Well, the divided highway is going to start this paving season. The Corner Brook Hospital is almost completed. No idea about... It's going to be...
Corner Brook Hospital, but they're building another one.
You had a question for me. Okay. Yeah, well...
They're building another hospital, isn't it? They're building the new St. Clair's?
Yeah, we don't know when. They haven't even selected a site for it as of yet. Penitentiary is at least 3 years away, so says the government, given the fact they put $15 million on the table for renovations over the course of 3 years, so that's down the road. The proposals for a window, what have you, they're down the road. We don't know when they're going to start. The possibility for Bailey-Nord, we have no idea. So it's easy enough to talk about all the projects that are in the offing, but when is an important question, as you pose.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. I works here in Newfoundland. I'm a heavy equipment trainer and truck driver trainer.
Okay.
And everybody that gets out and gets the trade, he goes right on to Alberta because there's nothing here. There's not a thing here, man. And they're not going. They're always talking about doing this, doing that, and talking about the fishermen all the time. Fishermen is not the only people in the Newfoundland, you know. There's people that keeps the roads up. There's the utilities, Newfoundland Power. And all those high trades people, welders and everything else, fishermen are not the only ones in the world, but they're the only ones gets their own way. They're getting $2.42 for crab. But ever since 2017, like the gentleman was on there before me, was talking about, what did he do with all that money they were getting ever since 2017? Didn't he bank enough to do them just in case they do get a bad season or two? Or I mean, that's what I did in my lifetime. I can afford to go see my son now. I was in Grand Prairie 21 years. I knows what's going on up there. I knows what workers up there, and I could be working. But I found a job here, and it's a job that I liked. So for $30 an hour, instead of going up there for 50 or 55, because I got everything here in where I'm living here now, just outside of St. John's. I got everything here I need, so I don't owe no money on nothing, so I'm all right where I'm too. But all this stuff they're doing, like we're doing this. Siobhan Cody come on the other day saying, "Oh, we got millions of dollars for this that we haven't had in 50 years, and we got millions of dollars for this other thing that we haven't had in 50 years," and everybody's still voting for Joey Smallwood. And the next election, they'll get in again, and people don't see it. I don't know why, but they don't see it.
I'm not so sure that's accurate. I think people see it. People talk about it all the time. And the fishery, I think the fish harvesters would argue your point that they get everything they want because they say the exact opposite. And certainly other jobs in the labor market, we talk about it all the time here. We don't have a strict focus on the fishery at all.
No.
Absolutely not at all. Right. And we talk about, the way things are greener on the other side. Alberta has long been involved in a boom, right? I mean, they don't have a provincial sales tax, but they also have the highest median income in the entire country. And, you talk about management money and what have you. The deficit in the province of Alberta last year was $4.8 billion. So it's not like they're lighting the world on fire either.
Yeah, they got a government up there now. They got a sensible government up there now, and she knows what she's doing.
Does she?
You go up there and buy a brand new pickup. Let's say I got a Toyota Tundra there. Let's say $100,000 pickup. You pay $115,000 plus shipping and all those old fees and everything else is going to cost you $120,000. You go to Alberta and buy the same truck and drive it home 6,000 kilometers. It's going to take you 6 days or whatever for $105,000. So where do you think I'm going to buy a truck to? I'm not going to buy it here.
It's simply a tax issue, but yeah, okay.
Well, tax issue. But look at the difference in tax. I bought a coat, a $200 coat was $210. Right here is $230. Now, Patty, come on.
What are you telling me to come on? Come on what?
Yeah, but I'm just saying, if the people are listening, come on. There's $20 difference in a stupid coat that you put on your back. I bought the coat because there was only 5% tax on it. And the same coat down here would have cost me $20 more. The same thing with everything else. I couldn't bring it all home, but there was a lot of stuff there I would have bought. I wouldn't have bought here.
Look, fair enough. Everyone understands the difference in taxes, but none of that can be attributed to the current premiums. None of it. What?
The gas, too. The gas is $1.38 when I left. And it's gone down now. I was talking to my son a couple nights ago. It's gone down again. And here it went down 0.7 cents last night. It's still the highest kind of price. You can't go nowhere. You can't buy no groceries. Everything's gone. I bought a cart of groceries up in Costco. Up there was $370-something. I was out here a couple of days ago in St. John's, and I had a half a cart for $450. So I mean, the people don't know this, right? And there's 80% of people in Grand Prairie are Newfoundlanders, and they got reason to be, and they're all laughing. They're laughing their head off up there the other night because Fury come up and tried to get those guys to come home. Come home to what? Nothing here to come home to, sir.
Okay. But
anyway, that's all I got to say.
The issue regarding taxes, everyone understands that. I lived in Alberta for the best part of the 90s. Nothing can be attributed to Daniel Smith or Andrew Fury on that front. I mean, the tax issue and the amount of tax predates either or. I mean, you can go back decades to talk about the lack of a provincial sales tax in Alberta, so that's got nothing to do with Daniel Smith. 15% was inherited by Andrew Fury as well. Not to say that's the appropriate number, because I would prefer to pay less in the way of sales tax, but it's interesting in Alberta. The deficit last year at $4.8 billion with no sales tax. So I think some of the math is also lost. Some of that's just straight up politics. If you had to add 1 or 2 cents to the provincial to create a 1 or 2 cent provincial sales tax, you probably could have cut that deficit almost in full, and consequently not have to borrow, not have to service that debt. But because no premier or potential premier is going to propose a sales tax because it'd be political suicide, then they just play this game. And is it the overall benefit to Albertans? Probably not, but they like it.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. My son's not coming home here because I encourage him, don't you dare even venture. And he owns this house I'm in here now, and the house is only 20 years old. I said, come home, all right. When I die, you come home and sell it and take the money and go on back where you do now. Because you got a comfortable life there. I don't hear nobody complaining. The roads to drive on is just the same as the living room floor. There's not a bump in them.
I appreciate
everything's hunky-dory. Just to let you know, that's all.
I'm glad he's enjoying his time in Grand Prairie. So is it Grand Prairie or Grand Cache got the big prison? I can't remember.
Grand Cache.
Grand Cache, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, because I lived not too far from it in Jasper and in Hinton, Alberta for quite a long time. That's where my children were born, as a matter of fact. Edgar, good to have you on the show. What?
There's biggest kind of mills up there, too. Sawmills and stuff, man. Loads of wood you should see. And there's wood that's been burnt, like forest fires and stuff like that. They're processing it.
Yeah, I know. Hinton is actually a mill town.
Yeah, they don't waste nothing up there. Anything the limbs burned out, he cuts it, brings it, and makes lumber out of it before it goes too bad, right?
I appreciate the time. Off to the break I go.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks Edgar. Man. Take care. Bye-bye. All right. Now, after this break, is the carbon tax. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the program. Let's go where? Let's go to the line number 1 again. Say good morning to the PC member for Stephenville Port au Port. He's the leader of the official opposition. That's Tony Wakeham. Good morning, Tony. You're on the air.
Hey, good morning. I just wanted to touch base. I've been out this week in the district of Fogo Cape Friels with our candidate, Jim McKenna, and going around Fogo, Change Islands, and of course now over in the New West Valley side of the district, and talking to people about their concerns. And as you might expect, it's the same type of concerns that we hear all across the province when it comes to access to healthcare, cost of living, of course, and fishery. And here in particular is the issues with the ferry schedule in terms of the people on Change Islands. But they quickly this morning, I wanted to talk about the carbon tax and the fact that it's going to go up again on April 1st. And it was interesting to hear our Premier Fury, come on and talk about all the letters he's written and how he now wants to pause the increase. Well, I take a different stand. I want to scrap the tax. But Premier Fury and his government, when they were introducing carbon tax in the province and the carbon tax increase that came about, during debate, his ministers stood up in debate and actually praised the carbon tax. So now all of a sudden they're against the carbon tax. They want the increase paused. So it's that's simply for political reasons only. If they were concerned enough about the carbon tax, it wasn't just about writing letters. They should have been standing up in the House of Assembly during debate and talking about how bad the carbon tax was, but instead they stood up and talked about how great it was going to be. And if the prime minister of the country wants options, then let's use technology, not taxation, to reduce.
Just 1 second, though, Tony. I mean, I guess everything is a political calculation, right? I mean, you and I can agree on that, regardless of what party, what policy we're talking about. But how could the Premier possibly stand up in the House of Assembly and call the carbon tax a bad thing when he himself and his government instituted a carbon tax themselves? The big difference here is that the government got all the revenue here provincially, as opposed to the carbon tax I'm paying now goes to the feds. And of course, people can talk about rebates all they like. So that would have been a pretty strange piece of politics if he had to stand up and say carbon tax is a bad thing, given the fact he put one in himself. And, when we talk technology, this is where I think the conversation really, I think Canadians deserve a much better, well-rounded, broader conversation about this. You and I have talked, and you agree that there's got to be some measures taken to combat climate change, right? I'm not putting words in your mouth there, right?
Absolutely not. Absolutely, we need to do that.
So the question...
We need to turn around and find different ways, and I think we have lots of opportunity in this province to benefit not only the province of Newfoundland and Labrador, but other provinces of Canada. When you think about our hydroelectricity development opportunities, when you talk about, and I've heard you talk in your show about LNG, and we know now there's some wind opportunities. So I think Newfoundland and Labrador is well poised to be a leader in the country in providing those alternatives.
Right. So let's get into tech. Because once again, I think a big conversation is required here. Because if people say, yes, we have to do something, and if it's not taxation, what is it? So, like, for instance, hydrogen. At this moment, every proposal in this province is to export that power. The only implication we'll have is the interaction with our grid. And we didn't even know how that's going to work, how much they're going to buy from us, at what cost, and or vice versa. So hydrogen, that's going to be part of the solution maybe for folks elsewhere, but say for domestic use. What do you mean by tech and innovation? Are you talking like carbon capture or carbon sequestration, or what exactly do you refer to in that front?
What I'm thinking, Patty, is when we think about our province and how much of our that wasn't me. That was just a drop. I think he's on a cell phone, is he? Okay, we'll get Tony back, though, because I'd like for him to be able to finish his thoughts. Let's go to line number 2. Kathy, you're on the air.
Hey, Patty. How are you today?
Very well. How about you? Ouch.
I'm great, thanks. I'm calling today. I'm a citizen of Bonavista. I'm also the chairperson for the Bonavista Peninsula Status of Women. We are not affiliated with any of the other statuses of women. We are a standalone organization. We don't have core funding from the government yet. So I just wanted to put that out there. Right now I'm calling as a citizen of Bonavista. I've started a province-wide petition to amend the Citizens Representative Act to include municipalities on the schedule. Right now, towns are kind of self-governing, so they're not accountable to anybody. So, with the municipalities included in the Citizens Representative Act, the residents can hold their towns accountable for any issues or whatever that they have. Right now, we have citizens across the province don't really have anywhere to go if they have issues with the town. They are referred back to the town.
So issues such as...
It could be anything. It could be from permits that they're looking for or anything like that.
Oh, so not necessarily inside the world of status of women.
No.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
And I started this personally myself. It came about kind of because of the status of women that I'm with on the Bonavista Peninsula, and kind of the issues that I'm having kind of with the municipality here in Bonavista. But that's basically not why I'm calling today. I'm just calling just to let people know that we are hoping to get this petition across the province and get it signed. Basically, this is a mechanism that once it gets royal assent from the House of Assembly, the Citizens Representative Council will have authority to investigate complaints like from residents right across the province. So, and I know some towns might look at this and say, well, right now all is good. The balance is there, everything is all good. But people get, councils leave, mayors leave, other people get elected kind of thing. And if we don't get this changed now, then in 5 years, 6 years down the road, when your municipality changes government, then that might be an issue for you then, but then there won't be anything in place. So that's why we're trying to get this passed now, so it will, right across the province.
Fair enough. And what kind of traction are you getting?
Well, we just started, and that's why I'm kind of coming on today. So just to let people know that these, they can reach out to me. I can leave my email if I'm allowed.
You sure can. Go ahead.
Kind of thing. So they can reach out. It will be Kathy Bishop at hotmail.com. And if anybody is interested in getting a petition, they can certainly contact me, and I can make sure that they can get that position. Right now in the Bonavista area, I think we have about 200 people that have signed. So that's just starting. So and it's not that I'm not against municipal governments or anything like that. I just think that as residents of any town, we elected these people to be in charge of our town on our behalf. So I think somewhere along the lines, they have to be accountable.
Fair enough. Kathy, what does the petition actually say? Just out of curiosity.
Okay, so my petition says, amend the Citizens Representative Act to include municipalities province-wide in Newfoundland and Labrador in the Citizens Representative Act schedule. And if you look at the schedule under the Citizens Representative Act, it includes a lot of things, but it does not include municipalities.
Fair enough. I was just curious to how it was worded. It's good to have you on, Kathy. Stay in touch. And if anyone wants to reach out to Kathy Bishop, email address is really an easy one. It's Kathy with a K, Kathy Bishop at hotmail.com.
With a C.
With a C. Font size K up on my screen. Sorry.
C. No worries.
C it is. C for Kathy.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Patty.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, let's rejoin Tony Wakeham on 1. Tony, you're back on the air.
Hey, Patty, maybe I should add cell phone coverage back on the list of challenges in rural Newfoundland and Labrador.
It's a big one.
Sitting here in my car never moved, and all of a sudden the call drops.
So where we were is trying to flesh out a bit more about what people are suggesting regarding using technologies. And I couch it by saying, are we talking carbon storage or carbon sequestration or what?
Yeah, and I was talking again. I don't know how far you heard me and everything, but I talked about the opportunities that we have right here in Newfoundland and Labrador when it comes to the things like our hydroelectricity development, for example. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that everyone was touting an Atlantic Loop, and that seems to have disappeared off the radar. And I think those type of investments give us an opportunity to not only service Newfoundland and Labrador, but also to service other provinces. We've talked about the potential for our resources and development in Labrador, but the need for more electricity development. So I think there's opportunities that we have right here. And I've heard you, like I said before, talk about LNGs and other things like that and using some of that. But those are things that I think we have the ability to do that. And the wind energy may be expanded to be able to help the hydro and be part of our grid. But those are things we should be talking about. But it seems to me, the easiest things for government to do is simply to tax. So, tax. Let's put a carbon tax on. And great, it may work for those people in downtown Toronto, but it doesn't work for the people in downtown New West Valley, where I am right now, sitting here when there's no options. And there's no options for people in Newfoundland and Labrador. And you were absolutely right when you talked about the premier standing up and bringing in their own carbon tax because they were getting the revenue. And now they don't get the revenue. And the federal government talks about they're giving all the money back. What they don't talk about is how much money, how many millions of dollars is it costing them to collect this carbon tax? How many millions of dollars are being spent to give it back? And then you ask the question, if you're giving it all back, why in the hell are you collecting it? But that to me, the real issue there is the impact it's having on everyday life. And I don't know if you heard me or not, but when I talk about a 50-liter fill-up, when you go to the pump on April 1st, you are going to be paying $10 of that 50-liter fill-up will be carbon tax. That's a big issue.
Is it
for people in Newfoundland and Labrador?
It's not quite that much. So
well, when you do 17 cents a liter times 50 liters plus HST.
Yeah, well, the HST, I mean, the HST is going to be there anyway, regardless if there's a carbon tax or not. The only thing
on the carbon tax, that's my point, Patty. The HST is applied to the carbon tax.
HST is applied to all the taxes, which is kind of unfair in the first place. You know, first you pay for the fuel, and then you pay the 10 cents to the federal government and the excise tax, then you pay the provincial tax, then you pay the carbon tax, and then you pay the HST, which is really not great. I mean, the concept of getting a rebate back and whether or not that makes sense, I guess the concept is, whether or not it's good or flawed or good or bad, is that price point pressure has long been the way we determine how we're going to live, what we're going to buy, and our habits and behaviors, right? So the thought is that if you have to pay more for certain things, that you'll make different choices. And the rebate is on the back end, so that wouldn't be part necessarily of my decision-making today. Like, most people live a fairly price-conscious lifestyle. And it is interesting, and not to say that because I was speaking with a member of the Conservative Party, for the Conservatives, pressure points and market pressures was the go-to mechanism when talking about fiscal policy for Conservatives. And I mean, Stephen Harper wasn't opposed to a carbon tax, which is also fairly interesting. My only and final thought is, I just want something that works, is the most cost-effective and overall effective. And when we talk about what the options are, and let's just talk carbon storage. At some point, regardless if it shows up on my receipt when I fill out my vehicle, at some point, anything we do, I will end up paying for in full or in part. So how effective is it? How much does it cost? And how do I end up paying for it? And we don't really have much of those types of discussions because tech can mean a variety of things. And it looks like carbon storage is a big one. There's even money from the feds involved with carbon storage. There's $6 million for a 3-year study here in this province about carbon storage. So how to make it work, say, 98% effectively, how much that cost? And how am I going to pay for it? And how does that look? I don't think we've really had that conversation, to be honest with you. And this is not in support of a carbon tax. This is, if people acknowledge we need to do something, the question is what? And how much the cost?
You're 100% right, Patty. And the whole problem is, my point is, that what government has done, whether it's the provincial government with its sugar tax or federal government with its carbon tax, the easiest thing for them to do, to be seen to be doing something, was to tax the people. Put taxes on the people and hurt them with these taxes instead of doing exactly what you just said. This should be a long-term plan. We all know climate change is real and it's happening in our communities. But how do we do it? What are the things we ought to be planning out? What are the things we can be doing? But simply adding taxes, to me, there's no thought process gone in. When I think about our own sugar tax, it was started off with the idea that this was going to behavior modification. We were going to make people healthier. And the Minister of Finance talked about the idea that we won't collect any tax. It'd be great if we never collected any tax because we know it's working. Well, it's not working because you're not only collecting tax, you're actually collecting more tax than you actually budgeted for.
Yeah, they said 9 million, they're bringing in 12. The last comment from me, then I'll give you the last word. If we're talking about the issue regarding climate change, unfortunately, the conversation has been very much limited to carbon tax. Because if we, say, for instance, pots of money out there, Canada Greener Homes, say, for instance, improve my insulation and doors and windows and those types of things, monies to make a transition towards central heat pumps or electric furnaces or what have you. So there's lots of different approaches because there is no such thing as just one thing that's going to work. It's going to have to be a suite of initiatives taken, whether it be with, making my home more efficient, the possibility to drive a car that's more efficient, the potential, if people are interested, to drive electric vehicles, the possibility for more of a punishment on the large emitters versus me. There's a whole suite of things that I think needs to be part of this conversation if we're really going to take it beyond the political theatre and get down to policy that's pragmatic, effective, and cost-effective.
Totally. I mean, and everything you talked about there is changes in technology, changes in how we do things. And that's exactly what we should and ought to be doing, encouraging people, helping people, not hurting people. Patty, my last comment would be on the startup of the fishing industry and how important it is for the 16,000 people that are directly or indirectly involved in it. We cannot have a repeat of last year. People are nervous. Harvesters want to go out and catch. Plant workers want to go back to work. The government needs to get this going, get this moving. We cannot afford another delay in the start of our fishery again this year. And with all due respect to the Premier, instead of talking about opening up an office in Boston, get in your office, get these ACP, get the producers, get the harvesters. Let's get this thing settled before the season is due to open so that everybody can benefit from the fishery.
Yeah, I can't wait to see that document. That's going to be fascinating. Tony, appreciate the time.
Thank you, Patty.
You too. Bye-bye. Break time. When we come back, Arthur's there to talk about the fishery. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Bigland FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Arthur, you're on the air.
Yes, Paddy. How are you this morning?
I'm doing okay. How about you?
I'm good so far. I want to talk a little bit about the fishery. I was fishing for 74 years. I'm 74-year-old now, and I never had a fishing license in my life. And what they're going on now with the fishery is outrageous. The fishermen should be allowed to catch whatever they can, any type. And the buyer was on yesterday on your show saying that he wouldn't buy. And he said that the oyster boys for the boat, he pays for it. The fisherman pays for all of that. That's taken out of me.
Okay.
So it's better for him to stop pulling these pockets and get out of the fishery altogether. That's what got the fishery like it is today. He is. Because Buddy was in there and on the Confederation building, and he got so much as what he wanted so far. But it's time for the Premier to get on behind his back.
So what specifically are you saying needs to change? I'm sorry?
The changes now,
yeah.
I'm 74-year-old, and I fished all my life, and I worked other places. I worked in the mainland. I worked everywhere. I carried rocks. I done everything to make a living. And now this man to get on your show and say that he's not going to buy crab, to be so outside. It's time for people to smarten up and sell them outside and close these doors because he's getting a grant from the government.
Who said that they wouldn't buy crab?
The head buyer, I don't know where he is from. He was on the news yesterday, and he said he couldn't afford to buy the crab. And the government is giving him the money to buy him.
I'm not sure who that person is, to be honest with you, or what specifically they said.
I can't remember his name, but he was the head buyer into the fishery. He buys and sells it into the States. He buys it, and he sells it again. And he said the catchers now would take the crab and sell them outside. Sure, why don't he take crab and pay the right price?
So was this person a processor or?
A processor.
Oh, okay. I'm not aware of any processor unwilling to buy crab because that's what they have the processing license for and how they make their money. So I'm not sure. I'll try to find that one.
Yeah, because he said he couldn't distribute the license. He couldn't give license. He's the buyer. He got everything to do with the fishermen. He buys their fish. He gives them a license to go fishing. He don't give it to them. They got to buy it.
Yeah, they have to apply for it, yeah.
They got to buy it and then turn around and sell it to him to the lowest price he says he wants for it. And he sells it for the top price, pulling these packets.
Yeah, let me see if I can find someone who might be able to fill me in on who that person may have been, so I can find what they said and who they are and try to wrap my mind around it a little clearer. But I'll try to find that, Arthur.
He was a big buyer into the fishery.
Okay. And so did you hear it here?
He had a big plant, and he said he'd have to close the doors because he couldn't afford to pay for the crab. He'd have to sell it to outside buyers.
Okay, let me see if I can figure that one out, Arthur. Anything else you want to say this morning?
And Mrs. was on there, and she said about the crab that Buddy told them that they were all shipped out. He wouldn't be able to open the doors because he couldn't handle what crab was so. What have we got, a toilet for a plant or what?
I don't know. Again, without knowing exactly who we're talking about or what they're all about, then I don't know what to say. But did you hear it on the news here on this station, Arthur?
Yeah, I heard it on that station yesterday.
Okay, during the newscast here coming up right now, I'll go in the newsroom, see if they can give me that information so I can understand where you're coming from. How's that?
Yeah, okay, thank you very much.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, Chris is going to kick off the final hour, talk about municipalities and some troubles in St. John's. What kind of troubles? We'll all find out right after this. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number one. Chris, you are on the air.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hi, Patty. How are you this morning?
Excellent today. How about you?
I'm doing great. I'm calling in. Kathy Bishop was on there earlier. It's funny how the world works. I was on your show, and Linda Swain's there the other week, and the power of VOCM is incredible. So they Googled my image and looked me up, and they are having some of the same issues that I'm having with, municipalities or cities and stuff. They're out in Bonavista. So I wanted to talk about the Bill 54 is a bill basically that, now, quote, if I'm wrong, you can, fix what I'm saying. So what Bill 54 is it allows governments, say if you have a problem with the city of St. John's and you want an inquiry done, you would go to the municipality, you would assume, or that's the way it was years ago. Now, when you go to the municipality, they will tell you that the city of St. John's is its own government identity. So the complaint just basically goes back to St. John's. So it kind of falls on deaf ears. So with this petition that Kathy and these ladies are trying to get done, which is a very important petition in my eyes, is going to allow, investigations or if there's questions that people have, that they're going to be inquired to properly. And it's going to, they're calling it a mechanism. It's going to basically, the petition is basically going to allow people's questions to be heard and there will be answers. So what it will do is it will allow basically this gray area that exists to non-exist. So I strongly am on board with Kathy and everything that they're trying to do with this petition. I myself am going to, try to get some names and stuff. Anyone who wants to get involved is more than welcome to give me a shout. My number is 763-5717. But I'm actually calling in, Patty, regarding to the city and my issue over on Duffett Road. I called there a few weeks ago, if you recall.
Yes, and that was about the accumulation of water, right?
That is correct, Patty, yes.
Okay.
So it's time for the story to be told, I call it. So we had all that drastic water. We had a horse sick and stuff. I told everyone that. So basically, the horse is still not out of the woods yet. So why I'm bringing the horse up and stuff is because it goes back to August 2018. We are into the development ourselves, so we understand like I said before, about, how things work, how water works, how, growth, trees, all that stuff works. We all have a general idea of that. So we went to the city with our concerns. We also emailed every single city staff employee down there our concerns, facing that if the development next door went through, that, what precautions were going to be taken for the water and where was the water going to go and stuff. We didn't get a reply. We didn't get an answer. It's fallen on deaf ears. So we went to Mayor Breen numerous times throughout the last few years about the water issue. And, still no reply. I don't understand. So I took all of my information, all my paperwork, everything that I had, I took to Mr. Breen once again. And, there is a water issue there. It's very obvious because if you can stand in the water, then it's pretty, it's pretty black and white to my eyes. So, I went to him with the concerns of, this water is going to come to our property. We knew that this was going to happen. So we went to the city with our concerns so this wouldn't happen. But nobody listened. Nobody wanted to meet, and here we are now with the barn flooded out, a sick horse, and back to the same games, no one responding to any of our requests, which I don't understand. So obviously I got digging into it a little bit, more and more and more, and we proceeded to try to get some information because obviously if I'm not getting a response, they're not going to give me any information. So we proceeded then to go to ATIP, the Access to Information process. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, so we went there, and that's how I obtained some information. Somehow or another, ATIP released only some of the information to us. I don't know if it was an oversight, a mistake, whatever. It happened. It is what it is. So we then obtained more information from sources. Obviously, I can't, can't give all my secrets out. But the barn then in 2022 floods. So we got 3 inches of water. So now, obviously, back to last week, the barn floods, it got 6 to 7 inches of water. So, we spoke to Mayor Breen about it, as I said before. No reply, no answer. I took all my information, my pictures, I brought it down. He told me out of his own mouth, stood under the spiral staircase in the chamber, that he was going to have a meeting with us. That was 1.5 years ago. He told me 2 to 3 weeks ago that he was going to have a meeting with us on the water issue over to the farm. So they sent out an engineer finally to the farm. The engineer refused to walk in the barn to take any measurements on what was going on, which I don't understand why you'd send someone out and they wouldn't, get accurate readings, measurements, all that stuff. So, I went back to, and I hate to keep constantly saying Mr. Breen, but I don't know where else to go or who else, to refer to, because it's him and the city staff. So the engineering came up. I have drone footage, I have videos, I got pictures. I'm willing to give this to any public person that wants it. And they came up, the head engineer, and said that there's zero water runoff here, which is impossible if you're stood in the puddle, don't you think?
Of course it is. There's a litany of people and concerns that are just confused as to why they can't get an answer. And this is just another glaring example. This one happens to be on the municipal level.
Well, yeah, it's so to finish it off, I call it, so there's a head wall. And if there's any developers listening out there or anyone who has done any development, they'll understand this. You're not allowed to redirect water towards another person's property, right? So there was a head wall put in. It's 3 foot on the ground, and it was a stall from the adjacent development. It faces our property. So obviously, us knowing about this, we went to him right away, and said, like, what's your plans with it? The city I'm talking about. We went to him and asked him, what's your plans with it? Is this going to give us any grief with water or whatever? They told us no. We all obviously know now that, it is giving us water. We got millions of liters of water gushing through our property, right? So with all this being said, in the last 3 months, nobody seems to know the answer once again. Someone went up and put it's called a storm retention reducer. Basically what it is a plate of steel that is welded over a hole culvert to reduce the flow of water so it backs up into a water retention pond so it slowly leaches down. So the city won't get back to me. They won't meet with me. They're telling me that there's no problems there. But yet somebody went up and put this in since I questioned all of this stuff. So if anyone's listening and could help me or point me in the right direction to try to get some answers, because I've got a lawyer on this now, and he won't even answer my lawyer back.
I would, if I knew where to point you, I'd be happy to do exactly that. So I wish I had some better and helpful advice for you, Chris. I'm sorry for your struggles and your frustration. And if the city is listening, maybe they can just do the right thing and have a meaningful conversation with you about why it's happening and what could or should be done to alleviate the water that's rushing into your barn. I'm off to the break, Chris, but I appreciate your time.
All right, Paddy. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. Let's take a break. Kaylee, you're next. Talk about the inclusive model of education, I assume. Is it, Vance? Okay, don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back. Let's go. Line number 2. Kaylee, you're on the air.
Hi, Patty. How are you?
Doing okay. Thank you. How about you?
Good. Fun fact, I was born in Hinton.
Oh, were you really?
Isn't that funny?
That is funny.
I talked about it earlier. I was like, nobody talks about Hinton, but I was born there too. Yep. 20 years ago. No.
Hinton, the home of Bobby Nystrom.
Yeah. My dad was RCP out there, so that's where I was born, and fond memories of the place, and it's lovely, so it's pretty cool to hear somebody who's been there as well and lived there. So, yeah, I was motivated to call in. I mean, I want to call in absolutely every day because I'm, like, yelling at the radio, like, my opinions, so somebody can hear them. But I finally broke down and was motivated to call today. I was inspired by the mom that you spoke to a few callers back about Mr. Jin's, I guess, comments on the NLS ESD situation and the inclusive model and all that stuff. So I honestly don't know where to start because it's such a long journey for us to even access support and services that are in place for neurodivergent children. So it's been about 6 years that we have started with a simple referral and ABA therapy. And I'm privileged enough to, not to toot my own horn, but I have a master's in counseling psychology. So having that privilege of knowing how important early intervention is and access to support and services that are available that a lot of people don't know. So I was advantaged and ahead of the game to get my son the help that he needed. So he's going to be 8 in a couple of weeks. And we finally, after, again, 5 years, received the help that we needed from the developmental department at the Janeway. And back in December 19th, he finally received his ASD diagnosis. Now, he is extremely high functioning. I describe him as a mix between Buddy the Elf and Sheldon Cooper. He is very happy, very empathetic. He's an amazing little boy, but his OCD tendencies just are too much for him and for the world. And he becomes stressed out sometimes. Now, he never reacts physically or violently or even in a frustrated way, but it's almost to the point where he's busting out of his skin. And so, I mean, I fully support in theory an inclusive model because obviously then you you're on a, thin ice when it comes to discriminatory practices for giving access to, equal access to education for all, which in theory, it's ethical, it's important, it's necessary. However, playing devil's advocate, I know that as much as I love my son in the classroom with his buddies and he's able to play well and cope, 70% of the time, I feel really bad for him knowing that he's in there busting out of his skin with, he has severe ADHD. He's just so hyper. He just needs to play, he needs to talk, he needs to go. And having to sit in a desk for those 7 hours a day and try to control his movements and his mind and his speech, I feel bad for him that I'm sending him into that environment every day. So I wouldn't have a problem with, it doesn't have to be all or nothing, but I would not have a problem with a special needs classroom or an alternate setting, one where he can have a little bit of free play, able to regulate himself, and then, kind of return back to the classroom. And I think a lot of kids would benefit from that as well.
So as part of the process, for instance, if someone has the potential for sensory overload, because I know where my wife works, when and if children who are, for instance, on the spectrum or other issues or exceptionalities, then the library becomes the place where they go. And so they can just catch that little break. So the thought of busting through your skin is tempered or lessened, at least for the time being. Is that how it's handled in your child's school?
In theory, yeah, everything is wonderful in theory. Are there student assistants there? Yes, in theory. However, there's 2 for the whole entire school, and they're on a rotating schedule. And my son is only allowed to go every day to this external classroom and work on some intervention techniques, and there is the sensory rooms and all that, but it's often reserved for the violent outburst or kids that are just unable to be, I hate to say the word, but uncontrollable in the classroom. And now are there some people who could be verbal and say, as they get older, I need to go and I need to de-escalate or I need to calm down? Sure. But when you're dealing with neurodivergent children or children, that have comorbid issues like, speech and language delay in conjunction with their ASD diagnosis or whatever diagnosis that they have, it's kind of like a one-size-fits-all model. And, of course, you're dealing with a public system, so that is going to be the way that it is. But my frustration, I log on to VOCM this morning and I see Fury down in Boston promoting, wanting to have a promotional office in Boston. And I'm scratching my head saying, what are you promoting? Are you promoting low literacy rates? Are you promoting violence in school? You're promoting no access to daycare, salaries that don't match inflation. Do you know what is falling out of her? And he is on a publicity tour promoting a false dream that Newfoundland is all these things that we are not. And the argument is we don't have enough teachers. We don't have enough this. We have more than enough. It's just the misallocation of funds is insane because the pot of money is there to hire the 6 additional teachers. If they can build art centers, and that has its place too, but what good is a concert hall, a 5th concert hall in a city the size of St. John's, when you got people dying of heart attacks because they're waiting to get, their dye test or waiting to see a specialist? I really don't know why common sense is missing here, and you can't look at the basic needs and start there and then build up. And when you have a stable society, why then can't we look at all the fluff? Because you have ruthlessness and houselessness and homelessness at record high. Back when I was growing up, you wouldn't have dreamed that there would be a tent city or any of these things. Or you walk downtown now and it's almost unrecognizable. And it's very simple that the early interventions and supports and services are not in place to then reduce the impact that it has later in life and society. And we have more education now than we ever have. So I don't know why there's these boards and consults, and like the mom said, come to the parents. We know what's best. So why can't it be on a case-by-case basis where actual people with skin in the game that aren't, and no offense, I know very little about Premier Fury's personal life, but I can guarantee that based on his upbringing, he has a different lens at which that he looks at society. And I'm sure it's not one of financial insecurities and one where his socioeconomic status impacted his ability to receive education or health care. But that's not the norm of what we're living in. And now the violence is happening, and my poor son is on that special needs bus going to school, and his bus driver, an older lady, got punched in the face 2 times and broke her glasses. And I'm saying, oh, my God, my son is subjected to this, witnessing this violent behavior. And then, because at the end of the day, whether the child is severely autistic or not, it still results in a punch in the face and violence that is my son is being subjected to on his 30-minute bus ride to school. So I'm ranting. I'm all over the place.
It's okay. I guess some general commentary. Some things are easier done than others. I mean, it's easy enough to put aside funding to build something. It's quite different to put aside money to hire more teachers, to fix the model of education, to hire cardiac surgeons, those types of things. So I guess, the low-hanging fruit, so to speak, is really easily attained. And we'll always see these types of what you refer to as a fluff announcement. The issue regarding the office in Boston, I guess the setting kind of drove that, because it was an Energy NL event. They were simply talking about energy stability and markets for energy, whether it be hydro or hydrogen or whatever the case would be. So I think that's I guess you kind of got set up, and maybe when you see the headline, it's like, my goodness, why are we talking about that when we've got all these issues, which you rightfully point out, because the list is long, and some of it can be relatively easily addressed, some of it is extremely complicated, and so I know one thing for sure, that the provincial Liberals, nor the Tories, nor the NDP, nor any independents, nor any single individual talking on this show, listening to this show, or sitting in the House of Assembly or the House of Commons, they don't have all the answers. Doesn't matter who you support. Yeah. It's simply not available in this world. So I understand your frustrations, especially when you say you have skin in the game. Your family is living it. I completely understand.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like I get what you're saying, that it was the right place, right time for him to say that, but that's exactly my point. His priority is elsewhere, whether he's in Washington or overseas or down in Boston, focusing on energy. It's like there's a time and a place for that, but we are in a crisis. We are in a mental health care crisis. We are in an educational health crisis, education system crisis. Every department you look at is in the quintessential definition of crisis. So maybe it's time to prioritize the boots on the ground and getting competent, capable people with insight and education and experience to finally pull the trigger. Because it's no different than the Green Report and everything else in between that they pay tons of money, gets people to sit around and talk about it, and nobody ever puts in place an action plans and executes it. And it's really sad because I'm watching our beautiful home and province suffer. Everybody is so just frustrated. It is wonderful, like, if you can get those little niche jobs that are excellent, like with the Verifins of the world or the Tech NL, like, that's lovely, but that's not reality for most middle to lower class people, and we're struggling to, when you go to Walmart and try to fill the grocery cart and you leave with 3 or 4 items and it's $150, like, it becomes really depressing and demoralizing. And I just, it's not, I'm completely nonpartisan here. Grew up a card-carrying liberal with my grandfather, but it's, and now if you're ever pushing back against the liberal policies and you side with some conservative policies or anything like that, then most times I find I have to keep that to myself because you're labeled homophobic or anything like that. So I find it's just so... You know what I mean? Like, it's what a time to be alive, because it's just conflict driven all the time, and it seems like the common sense is missing. And I would really, really implore our government officials to take these issues seriously instead of just giving, talking or speaking points on them, and actually put things into action. And it starts with kind of overhauling the education system, because you tried the inclusive model, you tried this, now there's no public exams, no kids can fail, and it's not serving them. The data and the stats are there to back up that it's not working. So who and when are they going to change?
I appreciate the time. I'm late for the news, Kaylee, but stay in touch.
Sorry, thanks.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. All right, let's take that break. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Bigland FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Alicia, you're on the air.
Hi, Patty. How are you?
I'm doing okay. How about you?
Well, I'm not doing too great, actually. I'm very, very frustrated today. I feel very, very broken and absolutely defeated by what's happening with our government right now concerning the fishery. Myself and my husband, we operate a sea urchin plant out in Stoneville, and we've been in business now for quite some time. I have 30 workers. A bit of a background, I guess, with us very briefly is that back in about 2010, we started the business as because there was a lack of producers, of course, in the area. The only way that they could work any sea urchin divers at all is it was done through outside buyers, which, we were involved with at that time. The government, of course, stepped in and they said, we weren't creating any employment within the province. So, this had to stop. We weren't able to use the outside buyers. So, fair enough, understandable. So my husband and I, we stepped up, we fought the government to try to get processing licenses. We went through all of the red tape, which is not near enough time on this show to be able to tell you all the things and hoops we had to jump through to make it happen. But we did do it, and we did make it happen. And we have been continuing now in business for about 13 years. We've abided by all of their rules. We've done everything that was necessary for us to do. We've grown our business. We've built extensions onto our facility to make it work. Each year, I'm very happy to say that my 30 workers always walk away, with their amount of weeks and hours and all the things that they need, and everyone is happy. The fishermen are all fishing. Everybody is fine. So, we've been watching, of course, this the protests and things that were happening. And I can't say that I disagree with those people at all, because I support the fishermen as well. I believe that there should be changes made in this province. And I was kind of just sitting back to see, what was going to happen. And when the outside buyers were permitted, when it was announced that they were permitted, we said, okay, well, that's we're definitely going to be affected by this, because, sea urchin will work when it comes to outside buyers. It absolutely will. That's how we started. We know who they are. The fishermen know who they are. Everybody knows how it works. They're going to be able to move it off the island. So obviously we're going to be affected by that. So we said, well, you know what? Just to not cause trouble and not to be upset or anything, with the fishermen, because we do support them. I want that to be clear. We do support them, but we were to the understanding, if one door closes, another one's going to open. So we said, okay, so you know what we're going to do now? We're going to shift it a little bit. We're going to get more licenses now. So the amount of time that I'm not going to be able to work during the winter, because, it'll be shipped off the island in whatever case, I'll be able to provide a different opportunity for my people during the summer months. So surely, if they're going to allow it to leave the island, with an application and $1,000, surely they're going to allow us to do it here on the island. If that's what we choose to do, surely no one's going to, that's just terrible. So anyway, we decided, just because we've been involved with government now for quite some time, and we said, we probably should just make a phone call just to make sure before all this gets carved in stone. Let's just make a phone call and see if indeed this is what the plan is actually going to be, before it gets carved out in stone. So we called in, and I can't believe what they told us. They said, no, that's not the case at all. You can pay $1,000 and you can become a buyer. You can buy whatever species you want to, but you can ship it off the island, but you cannot bring 1 pound inside your plant.
Right. So, we had a lady call earlier with the exact same concern, and it just kind of makes very little sense to me. Maybe we're just trying to work through some kinks here, because a lot of things have changed inside of maybe 48 hours last week, but none of that makes any sense to me. So if we're talking about expanding capacity and for people to be able to process whatever they're able to buy, it just kind of is a little bit nonsensical. So the answer you got is the same one she got. Yeah, you can pay $1,000, get a buyer's license, but you can only ship it out of province. Why would anyone want to do that? Why would you want to do that? You own a plant.
Absolutely. What do I want to do? And you know what? I could be super greedy, and I could say, you know what? Awesome. That's wicked. I'm going to buy it all. I'm going to leave all my workers home, and all these people who have worked with us and, through all the winter months, these people have been so loyal to me, and they've grown with us since we've started. I'm just going to throw all into the wind and say, sorry, guys. And I would never do that. And I can't believe the government is putting us in a place where this is even an option. I just can't believe that. I'm completely floored. And you know what? If I don't fight for these 30 people, who's going to? Like, I don't claim to understand all of the crab and all. I don't know that. We don't really follow that as much. I've tried. I've applied for crab licenses in the past, of course, but You're never going to get that right now. But, we've tried. I've tried to expand, but, we were pretty comfortable where we are. So, if I don't fight for these people, who's going to do that? We are the collateral damage. They're in a war. There's always a collateral damage, and that's going to be us who's sitting here in the central Newfoundland, minding our own business, doing our own thing, and now I have a building. I have a building that's capable of doing it, and the government tells me, no, sorry, you can put it on a truck and let it go. How is that even fair? I don't believe for 1 minute that when the fishermen went in there to protest, I don't believe that they wanted this. I've heard them say they don't want the plant workers to be affected. They don't want things to, and I believe that. So I just want all these fishermen to know that this is what they're doing to me. And I don't blame them for standing up for their rights at all. I really just don't. But my 30 workers in my building, I'm collateral damage. We're all dead in the water. That's it. We have nothing because they won't let us. All I'm asking for is to let me bring it into my. I have a CFIA approved building. I have everything done exactly the way. It's a big investment that myself and my husband did, and it's changed our life completely. We do everything exactly the way that we're supposed to do it. I report. I everything that I'm supposed to do. I don't cause any troubles, and we're the ones going to die because of it.
Yeah, well, the harvesters might not want to have a negative impact on the processing sector because of what they wanted, but everything that has a cause has an effect. And the CFIA, is that Canadian Food Inspection Agency? Is that what that meant?
It is.
Okay.
Yes, it is, yes. Yeah.
I appreciate the concern. It makes all the sense in the world to me. It is going to be absolutely fascinating to see what that legal document looks like whenever it's released. And I would have hoped it would have been by today. And secondly, I don't think anybody really truly knows how this is going to work this season. I think we'll probably focus in on crab, but even though the conversation is much larger than simply one product or one species. So by the time Christmas comes and we have a chance for a post-mortem and see what the actual impact was, whether or not competition meant more money, whether or not the processing sector suffered, small, large, or medium-sized, and multi-species plants and all the rest of it. So it's going to be a really curious season to follow. And I hope it doesn't have the unintended consequences that it might.
Yes, but I'm with you. I really hope as well. But I don't feel that it would be very responsible of me just to sit here and hope and wait and wish, because I have 30 families who, without this, what are they going to do? This is like, I'm not talking about people who have big pensions. These people, they depend on this. We have income that coming into small towns, in central Newfoundland. I have people in Summerford that work with me, Birchie Bay, Gander Bay, Virgin Islands. These people, this is their livelihood, and now they're sitting home saying, "Oh my God." So do I have a job next year? I said, well, I don't know. I can tell you, I guarantee you that outside buying with sea urchin will work. It will work because we've done it, and will it work with the crab and all the rest of it and all the rest of the species they're talking about? I don't know, because I'm not involved in that part of the industry right now. I don't know. But with the sea urchin, I guarantee you it will work. So when it works, what does that mean for me?
It's an excellent question. So when they throw out, it's going to be available for all species, that's a pretty big tectonic plate shift in thinking about the fishery, and maybe, just maybe, some species where, as you point out, sea urchins is probably an easy picker for an outside buyer to take advantage of. So I appreciate your time and your concerns, Alicia. Stay in touch.
Yes, I absolutely will. Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care.
All right. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Will I take Niall here before the break, Fance? Let's go ahead and say good morning to Niall Hickey from the Newfoundland Embassy Pub and Eatery. That's on 3. Niall, you're on the air.
How's it going today, Paddy?
Doing okay, man. How about you?
Good, sir. Good. Just want to say a big fan of your show. You do great service to the public.
I appreciate it. What's coming up tomorrow at the Embassy?
So we got Cones for a Cause tomorrow. We teamed up with the OCM and Greg Spit and the Leukemia Lymphoma Society of Canada. So tomorrow, every cone we sell, 50 cents, will be donated to the charity. And just want to let everyone know to come down between 12 to 9, 79-81 New Gower Street, right across from the Mary Brown Center.
Terrific. You guys do a lot of good partnerships and a lot of good yourselves, so bravo and keep it up. Very quickly before I have to get to my final break of the day and the week, so you're also involved in some naloxone kit training down at the pub, which I think is a great idea as well. How's that going?
Thank you. It's going great, I got to say. Team Eastern Health on this was huge for us and huge for the community in general. It's taking a lot of stigma away from the problem that's going on in the community. We have pretty much unlimited amount of kits. We've given over 200 kits away so far. You don't need to put a name down, nothing. It's very anonymous. Just come in, grab one, and away you go. And so we're just happy to be part of that, I must say.
Yeah, and there's just a little code there that brings you to a training video, which is very short, and it's not a complicated kit to utilize. So congratulations on that initiative, and good luck tomorrow afternoon.
Thank you very much, Patty. Have a great day.
You too, now. All the best.
Cheers.
Right. Bye. You're welcome. Bye-bye. Final break of the day. When we come back, Glenda's there to talk about taxes. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Bigland FM radio network.
Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 1. Glenda, you're on the air.
Hi, Patty. How are you today?
I'm doing okay, thanks. How about you?
That's good. Yeah, I'm not too bad. I got dialysis this evening, but other than that, I'm not too bad. I'm calling now because I got 2 adult children in Alberta. I want to make a comment on Buddy that was talking about the taxes on his coat and that. They're in Grand Prairie, Alberta, and when my daughter was home last and her husband, they were even looking at a house in my own town that they'd love to buy and move home. But when they thought it over and considered, what they'd be making there compared to up there, and I mean, they couldn't do it. They had changed their mind. They just couldn't. And my son is up there, and he'd love to move home, and he got his own home in my own town, and he can't afford to live there. So it's ridiculous. It's just, I mean, what would they be doing if they moved back here? McDonald's or something. I mean, that's only like 1/4 of what they're making in Alberta. So it's pretty sad that, they want our kids to come home. I mean, if they want our kids to come home, they're going to have to do something, because there's no incentive for them to come back here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so if people are happy where they're living, then I'm not sure what I'm supposed to think about that or say about that. If they're more content and have a better lifestyle in Alberta, then...
Yeah, they'd rather be home, but they can't afford to live here. So they're settled down in Grand Prairie, where everything is so much cheaper. Gas, groceries, taxes, everything's so much cheaper. But they would love to be home.
Yeah, I mean, I lived in Alberta. I came home. People, if they want to make it work, they probably can. But, people have some good lifestyles in Alberta. They get used to it, and they do the cost comparison. But one thing for sure, it's more expensive to have a house in Alberta than it is here. I mean, to purchase one. To maintain it, probably not, especially when you talk about the affordability of
purchase, but my son, he's renting. But, they like it there. But, I don't think there's any Newfoundlanders that don't really want to be home if they could do it. Yeah, I think Newfoundland is into home, and you move wherever you want, but I think you still got that little wanting to go home.
I think that's fair. Yeah, that's certainly how I felt.
Yes, we were up there too for 9 months up there. I had a good job. I was the night manager of a gas station up the convenience store gas station up there, and my husband was making good money, but my grandparents were still alive at that time, and every time the phone would ring with a 709 number, my heart come up my throat because I thought something might have happened to Man and Pop. So I couldn't handle it. I had to come back home and work in St. John's, but then I got sick, and of course I'm on disability now. But I couldn't. I came home even though I took a big pay cut. But some people still do it.
And that's going to be the nature of the beast. People will decide if their life is good where they are, they'll stick it out, and if not, they'll move, I suppose. I'm not sure what else to say.
If it wasn't for my grandparents getting elderly, we'd probably still be up there.
I appreciate your time, Glenda. Hopefully the family gets a chance to spend some time together over the course of the year.
Yes, my love. Thank you very much. You have a good day.
You too. Take care. All right,
okay.
Bye-bye. Final word this morning goes to line number 2. John, you're on the air.
Good day, sir, and thank you for taking my call.
Happy to do it.
I just wanted to, touch base on some issues in education here. I was watching the national news last night. They were talking about an increase in absenteeism right across the country, and Newfoundland, Labrador, unfortunately, had the highest stats in what I would call like chronic absenteeism. And, of course, listening to your show and reading the news and so on, there's a talk right now about increase in violence in schools, and you had someone on today talking about the inclusion model, and you were talking to that person about basically wondering if we had enough resources to run that effectively and so on. And it should be obvious, I think, that there has to be a correlation between these kinds of pieces of information and, the province looking right now at the PISA scores and the final destination, you might say, there has to be an effect. I mean, they can't be independent. Obviously, for example, if we have a high absentee rate, our scores in standardized testing internationally are going to be lower than countries who maybe have got a better handle on this. And I just think here right now, before the provincial government looks at large-scale revamping of, say, a particular curriculum area or so on, maybe we're not necessarily looking at the data correctly. We have to dig deeper into why these kids are missing school, or why these violent acts are going on, or better models of inclusion, for example, before we can look at the final worrying about what our PISA score is. Just get your opinion on that.
Yeah, fair enough, and it's a good question. I think basically, if we just look at things in silos and just one feature of education, one shortcoming in education, then we're probably going to miss the most effective policy. Because I'm thinking that chronic absenteeism has a direct relationship with violence. Chronic absenteeism has a direct relationship with math, reading, and science scores. So I think there's a need for this to be an all-in, as well-rounded conversation as possible. Because if we just think if you fix the curriculum, that's probably not going to have anything to do with violence. If you just fix the curriculum but don't change the way we deliver it, then it's probably going to have no impact appreciably on math scores. So I think that's kind of where I come from.
Absolutely. And the other thing that I want you to consider here is, just for a moment, I was an educator before I retired, and for a moment, just drop the highest achiever in your class and drop the kids who are struggling, and look at a child who is performing at, say, like about a 60% average in a class. You know what I mean? Like someone who is, unfortunately for the teacher, you're looking down, you're kind of saying, well, you're making it. You're doing okay. You're not probably where you could be, but you don't have the time to get that kid from a 60 to a 70 or 75 or 80 or whatever. You know what I mean? You don't have a chance to deal with a student who is, yes, making it, but they could be doing so much better, if they had a little bit extra attention. That always broke my heart in education, because your resources are tied up either in trying to address kids who may have a behavioral issue or just struggling academically and so on, to try and bring them up, or people were demanding that you had enrichment. And sometimes the child who is just sort of in the middle of the road doesn't get the boost that potentially, if they had a little tiny bit of a boost of confidence, they could push themselves into an area where they were always performing well, and in which case improve all our overall performance in some of these standardized tests that were measured on.
Bell curve the classroom.
Yes. And, and lastly, I would have to say, I had the good fortune of attending for a moment the drama festival that just took place out in the Carbonear area. And I'm thinking, when provinces are looking at curriculum and so on, and what it takes to get kids in school, events like drama, music, physical education, sport, all these kinds of things, I hope to God that the people out there who are planning our next steps in education don't, forget that a lot of these kinds of things in school are the things that bring a lot of kids in there, are the things that create chances for kids to explore safe spaces and to work together and to work out their differences and be inclusive. And, don't think you're going to solve it by just changing, for example, a math curriculum and thinking, we need to throw out some of those other areas to spend more time on areas where we can. Those are the areas that bring kids into school in a lot of cases.
I agree. It's just not the core subjects that actually matter to a well-rounded student and good academic outcomes. Music, for instance, has a well-documented impact on your ability to learn. So I appreciate the time, John. You've had the last word. We're up against 12.
Take care, and thank you for taking my call.
My pleasure. Bye-bye. All right. Hopefully everyone has a nice Easter, and we will indeed pick up this conversation again on Monday morning right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, Fonz King, I'm your host, Patty Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy weekend. We'll talk Monday. Bye-bye.